Lena Moore was humiliated for being short and having a soft frame. People made fun of her shoes that looked like they came from a thrift store. They called her terrible names like the janitor's sister, the cosplay boxer, and the walking kettlebell. But in one single round, she dropped an 80-kilogram man with a perfect liver punch, and the entire gym went completely silent. Lena stepped into Cliffside Boxing and Performance Gym on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in Brooklyn. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, leather, and expensive protein shakes. The gym was divided into two worlds. In the back, real fighters trained, with taped knuckles and bruised faces from hard sparring sessions. In the front, rich kids and fitness models paid personal trainers to create fake workouts for their Instagram photos. At 5 foot and 132 pounds, Lena barely got any attention when she walked in. She looked like she had wandered into the wrong building. Her white t-shirt was faded with a frayed hem from years of wear. Her boxing shorts hung loose and were patched at the seams. Her training shoes were cracked with thin, worn soles that squeaked on the polished floor. Her gloves were patched and scuffed, hanging from her wrist. Her hair was pulled into a low bun, showing a thin scar across her chin that was so subtle most people missed it. She carried a canvas gym bag with frayed straps over one shoulder. Her brown eyes looked around the room calmly but sharply, like a hidden blade. She moved with quiet purpose, her steps careful and deliberate. Her presence seemed unimportant, but there was something heavy about her that no one could identify. The gym's chatter continued as normal. No one noticed her yet. The front desk was busy, run by Kyle, a trainer with a sharp jawline wearing a tight Cliffside branded tank top. He was looking through a sign-up sheet while half listening to a fitness model named Chloe. She was complaining loudly about how the gym's lighting was ruining her latest TikTok video. Her ponytail bounced as she gestured, her voice sharp and demanding. Lena approached the desk, her bag brushing against her hip. She set it down gently and said, "Hi, could I register for a sparring round?" Her voice was soft but clear, cutting through the noise like a whisper in a storm. Kyle froze with his pen hovering over the sheet. He looked her up and down, his eyes stopping on her worn shoes and patched gloves. His lips twitched, almost forming a smirk. "Sparring in the ring?" he said doubtfully. "This isn't a cardio class." "Have you ever even thrown a punch?" Chloe snorted while adjusting her sports bra. "Oh, honey, you're going to get flattened," she said loudly, not bothering to lower her voice. A couple of nearby trainees in tank tops with Cliffside Elite logos chuckled, looking at Lena and expecting her to blush or back down. She didn't. Her face stayed calm and relaxed, as if she hadn't heard them at all. Before Lena could respond, a loud, barking laugh cut through the gym. Jason Creed, 26 years old, 6 foot and 80 kilograms of lean muscle and arrogance, leaned against a punching bag. His brand new gloves gleamed under the fluorescent lights. His hair was perfectly styled and his smile was sharp and mean. Jason was a gym regular who called himself the local champion. He had won a few amateur fights against out-of-shape opponents. He loved filming sparring sessions where he played with beginners, then posting them online with captions like, "Teaching the rookies how it's done." Jason looked Lena over, his grin getting wider as he saw an easy target. "Sparring here," he said loudly so everyone could hear. "You're like, what, 100 pounds? Soaking wet? You'd snap if I breathed on you too hard." The crowd around him burst into laughter. A guy in a Cliffside Elite tank top called out, "Yo, Jason, don't break her. She's got to make it to her desk job tomorrow." Another trainee, a woman with a high ponytail, nudged Jason's arm and said, "Careful, champ. If you break her nose, you're paying her medical bills." The gym filled with cruel mockery. Lena stood still, her eyes locked on Jason without blinking. She tilted her head slightly and asked in an even voice that could have been mistaken for politeness, "Are you willing to take a round with me?" The words were simple, but felt like a challenge wrapped in cotton. The crowd's laughter became even crueler, pressing against Lena like a physical weight. A group of fitness models with manicured nails and energy drinks formed a tight circle near the ring, their voices dripping with poison. "Look at her shoes," one sneered in a high, cutting voice. "Did she dig those out of a dumpster?" Another woman with a spray tan and a diamond nose stud mimicked Lena's walk, exaggerating the squeak of her shoes while her friends cackled. "She's got to be lost," she said. "This is a gym, not a soup kitchen." A male trainee with glistening, sweaty biceps leaned in, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yo, Jason, you're fighting the janitor's sister. Make it quick, she's got floors to mop." The crowd roared with laughter, each word aimed at Lena's quiet dignity. She stood by the ring, adjusting her gloves, her face showing nothing, no shame, no anger, but the air around her seemed to thicken, charged with the gym's collective disdain, like a storm she refused to acknowledge. The gym erupted again with even louder laughter. Chloe doubled over, clutching her water bottle. "Oh my God, she's serious!" she gasped. The guy in the tank top shook his head, muttering, "This girl has no idea what she's in for." Another trainee filming his deadlifts called out, "Hey, lightweight, you sure you don't want a yoga class instead?" The mockery was endless, filling every corner of the gym. No one thought she was serious. Not Kyle, not Chloe, not any of the trainers or kids posing with dumbbells. Jason clapped his hands sharply, playing to his audience like a ringmaster. "Oh, this is too good," he's turning to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, we got ourselves a challenger. Little Miss Office Worker wants to step into the ring with Jason Creed." The fitness models giggled, their phones already out to capture what they thought would be comedy. Lena didn't react. She adjusted her gloves, the frayed straps creaking as she tightened them. Her movements were precise and unhurried. Kyle smirked as he wrote Lena's name on the sign-up sheet with a flourish. "All right, fine. 1 round, 3 minutes. Jason, take it easy. She's probably never thrown a punch in her life." The head coach, Tony, a tough-looking man with a weathered face and a rough voice, stepped forward while wiping his hands on a towel. He looked Lena over, his eyes narrowing slightly, but didn't ask questions. "You don't have to win, sweetheart," he said in a talking-down tone like he was speaking to a child. "Just survive. Tap out if it gets too rough." Lena nodded once, her lips pressed into a thin line, and climbed into the ring. Her shoes scuffed the canvas as she moved. As Lena climbed into the ring, a trainer named Vince, with a clipboard tucked under his arm, leaned toward a group of regulars. His voice was low, but deliberately loud enough to be heard. "This is a joke, right? She's going to get herself hurt, and we'll all be stuck cleaning up the mess." He gestured at Lena with a sneer twisting his face. "Look at her. Those gloves are older than my car. She's probably here to impress some boyfriend." A woman nearby in designer leggings laughed sharply. "Boyfriend? Please. She looks like she's auditioning for a low-budget Rocky movie." The group snickered, their eyes darting to Lena, who was testing the ropes with precise movements despite the worn canvas under her feet. A kid with a man bun filming the scene zoomed in on her scarred chin, muttering, "Bet that's from tripping over her own ego." The gym's atmosphere grew uglier, each taunt calculated to break Lena's quiet resolve. Yet she didn't look up or respond, her focus locked on the ring as if the world beyond it didn't exist. The crowd gathered closer, their phones raised, lenses glinting under the lights. The mirrors reflected their anticipation, their smirks, their certainty that this would be over in seconds. Jason strutted to his corner, slipping on his gloves with a flourish. His entrance music, generic hip-hop, blared from a Bluetooth speaker. He bounced on his toes, shadowboxing for the cameras, his red and gold gloves flashing. Lena stood in her corner, her stance relaxed, her hands low, her eyes tracking Jason's every move. Before the bell rang, Jason paused his shadowboxing to address the crowd, his voice booming with fake excitement. "All right, folks, let's give our little challenger a warm cliffside welcome." He pointed at Lena with a vicious grin. "What's your name, kid? Tinkerbell, or maybe Sparky, 'cause you're about to get lit up." The crowd howled with laughter that cut through the gym like broken glass. A trainee in a neon headband shouted, "Put her back in the kids' class, Jason." A burly man with a tribal tattoo yelled, "Don't cry when he sends you home, sweetheart." The insults piled on, each one sharper and more degrading, as if Lena were just a prop in their entertainment. A woman recording on her phone zoomed in, narrating, This is what happens when you think you're tough, but look like a thrift store reject. Lena stood in her corner, her hands low, her eyes fixed on Jason. Her silence was a stark contrast to the loud scorn around her. The gym's cruelty was like a living thing wrapping around her, but she didn't bend or break. The bell rang with a sharp clang that silenced the chatter, and the room closed in. Jason came out fast, his jab snapping like a whip. He threw a three-punch combination: jab, cross, jab, his gloves cutting through the air with practiced precision. Lena didn't throw a single punch. She shifted her weight, her feet sliding across the canvas with smoothness that seemed almost lazy. She slipped left, then right, her head tilting just enough to let Jason's punches graze past her. Her body dipped low, knees bending as she weaved under a high cross. The crowd didn't notice at first, too busy cheering Jason and waiting for Lena to crumble. As Jason threw his first punches, a group of trainers near the ropes began commenting loudly enough to carry over the crowd's cheers. "She's going to run out of the ring in 10 seconds, one said with crossed arms. "Bet she trips over those clown shoes first," another added, laughing. A female trainee with electric blue nails leaned forward, shouting, "Hey, lightweight, you forgot your tutu!" The crowd ate it up, their jeers growing bolder and more personal. A guy with a buzz cut tossed a water bottle cap toward the ring, not aiming to hit, but close enough to make a point. "Go back to Zumba, girl," he called, grinning as his friends high-fived him. The gym's energy was toxic now, a feeding frenzy of ridicule aimed at Lena's every move. She slipped Jason's punches with ease, but the crowd didn't see her skill. They saw her size, her worn gear, her quiet manner, and they tore into her for it. Lena's face remained like a mask, her focus unshaken, but the storm of insults seemed to hang in the air around her as she navigated without a single glance. But Marcus, a wiry trainer with a shaved head and a boxer's nose, squinted from the sidelines with his arms crossed. "Hold up," he muttered to the personal trainer next to him, a guy named Derek. "That's not beginner defense. That's classic Muay Thai movement." Derek frowned, glancing at Lena. "Muay Thai? She's just dodging Lucky, maybe." Marcus shook his head, his eyes narrowing. "No way. Look at her feet. That's trained. That's deliberate." His voice was low, but carried a hint of unease, like he'd just seen something he wasn't supposed to. The crowd kept laughing, their phones recording, completely unaware of the shift Marcus had noticed. 20 seconds in, Jason's confidence started to crack. His punches were landing on air, and Lena hadn't even raised her gloves to block. She was reading him, her eyes locked on his shoulders, his hips, the tiny signals that betrayed his next move. Jason growled, stepping in closer, his frustration bubbling over. He threw a wide right hook, the kind of punch that looked good on video, but left him exposed. Lena pivoted sharply, her lead foot planting firm, her back heel sweeping out to change her angle. Jason's momentum carried him forward, his balance failing. He stumbled, his gloves dropping for a split second. The laughter in the gym died, replaced by a low murmur. "Did you see that?" Chloe whispered, her phone still recording, her voice tinged with confusion. "She just made him miss." Derek, standing next to Marcus, frowned deeper. That was weirdly clean, like too clean. The guy in the Cliffside Elite tank top, who'd been heckling earlier, leaned forward, his smirk fading. "What's she doing? She's not even hitting back!" The crowd's energy shifted, their certainty cracking like thin ice. Midway through the round, as Lena dodged another of Jason's wild swings, a cluster of gym regulars near the front began chanting, "Take her down! Take her down!" Their voices were rhythmic, almost gleeful, as if Lena's presence in the ring was an insult to their world. A woman with a nose ring and a Cliffside hoodie shouted, "You're embarrassing yourself, girl! Quit while you're still standing!" A man next to her, his arms covered with tattoos, added, "Jason, stop playing! Put her on the floor!" The chant grew louder and more aggressive, drowning out the sound of Jason's heavy breathing. A kid with a selfie stick leaned over the ropes, filming Lena's every move while narrating, "This is what delusion looks like, folks." The crowd's hostility was like a physical presence, a wall of contempt that seemed to press against Lena from all sides. Yet she moved with the same quiet precision, her eyes never leaving Jason, her body flowing like water around his attacks. The gym's cruelty reached a fever pitch, each taunt a dagger aimed at her silence, but Lena remained untouched, her focus a shield against their hate. Lena's face didn't change, no smirk, no taunt, no sign she'd registered the crowd's shift. She circled back, her stance low, her gloves hovering near her waist. Jason recovered, his cheeks flushing red with embarrassment. He was angry now, and that made him reckless. He squared up, his shoulders tensing as he prepared a showy uppercut, the kind of punch that would have looked brutal on his highlight reel. He smirked, thinking he had her cornered against the ropes. Lena saw it coming, her eyes flicked to his chest, then his elbow, reading the angle of his arm. She crouched, her hips rotating in one fluid motion, her core tightening like a coiled spring. Her right glove snapped forward, a liver hook aimed square between ribs 8 and 9. The sound was sickening, a dull, wet thud like a hammer slamming into dead wood. Jason froze, his smirk vanishing. His eyes went wide, his breath catching in his throat. The uppercut never came. His knees buckled and he collapsed, curling into himself on the canvas, his hands clutching. The gym went silent. No cheers, no gasps, just the faint hum of the overhead lights and the creak of the ropes. Jason's face turned pale green, his mouth open as he coughed, unable to move. A trainer vaulted into the ring, shouting, "Don't touch him! Check his breathing!" The crowd stood frozen, their phones still raised, their mouths open in disbelief. Chloe's hands trembled, her video still running, capturing the moment in stark clarity. Marcus shook his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "That was textbook," he said. "That liver hook. Almost no one lands it clean. Who the hell is this girl?" Derek stared, his protein shake forgotten in his hand. "She didn't even look mad," he murmured. "She just did it." Lena stepped back, her gloves still raised, her breathing steady. She didn't look at Jason, didn't look at the crowd. She just waited, her scar catching the light as she tilted her head slightly. The trainer in the ring checked Jason's pulse, muttering something about shock and stay down. The air felt heavy, the gym's bravado replaced by a stunned, almost respectful silence. The gym's door swung open, the hinges creaking loudly in the quiet. An older man stepped inside, Coach Mike, a legend in the New York Golden Glove circuit. His face was weathered, his hair graying at the temples, his eyes sharp and unyielding like they could see through walls. He took one look at the scene, Jason curled on the canvas, Lena standing calm in the ring, and burst out laughing. The sound was deep and rough, like gravel under boots, and it broke the tension like a thunderclap. "I knew that was you," he said, pointing at Lena, his voice carrying across the gym. "Lena Moore, former Northeast lightweight champion, retired after a knee injury. You guys just mocked the Viper, 60 kilos of pain wrapped in cotton." His laughter faded, but his eyes gleamed with pride and maybe even amusement. Coach Mike's laughter faded, but his voice carried a weight that silenced the gym's whispers. "You all thought you were clever, didn't you?" he said, his eyes sweeping the crowd, pinning each guilty face. "Calling her names, laughing at her gear. That's Lena Moore, undefeated in the Northeast lightweight division for 3 years. She broke jaws and dreams before most of you could throw a decent jab." The fitness models shrank, their phones limp in their hands. Chloe's face was ashen, her confidence evaporated. The guy in the Cliffside Elite tank top stared at the floor, his bravado gone. Mike stepped closer to the ring, his voice rising. "She didn't come here to show off. She came to test herself. And you just showed the world how small you are." The gym felt like it was holding its breath. The mirrors reflected a crowd humbled and exposed. Lena unstrapped her gloves, her movements deliberate, her silence louder than Mike's words. The revelation wasn't just about her past. It was a mirror held up to their shame, and it burned. The room seemed to shrink. Every head turned, every eye dropped. Chloe lowered her phone, her face burning with shame. Kyle at the front desk stared at the sign-up sheet, his pen frozen in his hand, his jaw slack. The guy in the Cliffside Elite tank top muttered, "A champion? Are you kidding me?" The trainee who'd called Lena the cosplay whispered to her friend, "We just insulted a champion." The trainee who'd mocked Lena stood rooted to the spot, her friend's hand on her arm, her voice trembling with regret. "We were so wrong," she whispered, her eyes glistening. "She's a champion, and we treated her like a joke." The crowd around her shifted, their faces a mix of guilt and awe, their earlier laughter now a bitter memory. A trainer nearby, his clipboard forgotten, spoke up, his voice heavy. "I've seen pros who couldn't move like that. We judged her on her clothes, her size, everything but her skill." The gym's atmosphere was thick with self-reproach. The mirrors reflected a crowd stripped of their arrogance. Coach Mike leaned against the ropes, his eyes scanning the room. "She didn't owe you a damn thing," he said. "Oh, but she gave you a master class in humility. Remember that." The crowd's silence was a testament to their shame, a satisfying reckoning. Tony, the head coach, crossed his arms, his smirk gone, replaced by a look of grudging respect. As the gym's silence stretched, he stepped forward, his usual swagger gone. He cleared his throat, his voice unsteady. "I should have stopped it. I let the mockery go on, thinking she was just nobody. I was wrong." The crowd murmured, their heads nodding in reluctant agreement. A female trainee, her ponytail limp, whispered to her friend, "We all were. She made us look like fools without saying a word." The revelation of Lena's past wasn't just a shock, it was a mirror, forcing the gym to confront their prejudice. Marcus, the wiry trainer, added, "That liver hook wasn't just a punch, it was a statement. She's the real deal, and we're the ones who look amateur." The gym's energy had shifted from mockery to reverence, each admission a brick in the wall of Lena's victory. Jason was still on the canvas, his breathing shallow, his ego shattered into pieces smaller than the grit on the gym floor. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the faint sound of Jason's coughs and the hum of the air conditioning. Lena didn't react to Coach Mike's words. She didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't acknowledge the revelation. She just unstrapped her gloves, the Velcro ripping loudly in the quiet. Her hands were small, her knuckles red from the impact, but steady. She stepped out of the ring, her shoes squeaking on the canvas, then the polished floor. As Lena stepped out of the ring, the trainer who'd vaulted in to check Jason knelt beside him, his face grim. "You're lucky she didn't aim higher," he muttered loud enough for the crowd to hear. "A liver shot like that? She could have stopped your heart if she wanted." Jason, still pale, coughed weakly, his eyes glassy with pain and humiliation. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, their phones lowering one by one. Marcus stepped forward, his voice cutting through the silence. "That's not just skill, that's mastery. You all laughed at a woman who could have ended this in 10 seconds. The words landed like punches, each one a reminder of their misjudgment. Lena's scar gleamed under the lights as she walked past, her bag slung over her shoulder, her presence a quiet rebuke. The gym's arrogance had been dismantled, and the truth of Lena's power hung heavy, a triumph that needed no words. The crowd's silence was their surrender, and it felt like justice. The crowd parted slightly, their eyes following her with a mix of awe and guilt. One of the phones was still recording, its owner too stunned to lower it. Lena stopped, her eyes locking onto the lens, her expression unreadable. "I don't need people to remember my name," she said, her voice low but firm, each word deliberate. "I need them to remember one thing. Never judge a woman by her size." She turned and walked toward the door, her gym bag swinging lightly at her side. The gym stayed silent as the door closed behind her. Jason was finally sitting up, his face still pale, his hands trembling as he tried to stand. No one rushed to help him. The crowd dispersed slowly, their whispers filling the air like static. "Did you see how she moved?" one trainee said, her voice hushed. "She didn't even break a sweat." Another, a guy with a protein shake in hand, shook his head. That liver shot. I felt it from here. Marcus leaned against the ropes, his arms crossed, muttering, I'm never underestimating anyone again. Chloe stared at the ring, her eyes distant, her phone clutched tightly. She didn't need to say anything. Her expression said it all. The mirrors reflected the gym's emptiness, the bravado gone, the egos deflated. The air felt different now, heavier, like the gym had been stripped bare and left to reckon with itself. No one laughed anymore. No one posed. The music had stopped, and the Bluetooth speaker sat silent in the corner. Outside, Lena walked down the Brooklyn sidewalk, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the pavement. Her knee ached faintly, a dull reminder of the injury that had ended her career 3 years ago. She didn't care about the gym, didn't care about the phones or the laughter. She'd come to Cliffside on a whim, needing to feel the canvas under her feet, needing to know she still had it. She hadn't planned to fight, hadn't planned to drop anyone, but Jason's laugh, the gym's mockery, it had stirred something in her, something she'd buried when she hung up her gloves. The city buzzed around her, indifferent to her past, her pain, her power. She adjusted her bag and kept walking, her steps steady, her scar catching the light. A bodega cat watched her from a stoop, its eyes narrowing, and she gave it a small nod, the closest she'd come to a smile all day. The world moved on, but Lena carried her own rhythm, one that didn't need applause. Back in the gym, Tony approached Coach Mike, who was still chuckling to himself, his eyes crinkled with amusement. You knew her? Tony asked, his voice low, almost reverent. Mike nodded, leaning against a punching bag, his hands stuffed in his pockets. Trained her for 2 years. Girl's got hands like lightning and a mind like a chess player. She could have gone pro if her knee hadn't given out. Tony whistled low, glancing at the ring where Jason was finally standing, supported by a trainer. And she just walked in here, no warning? Mike shrugged, his smile fading slightly. That's Lena. She doesn't announce herself, she just shows up and reminds you who she is. He paused, then added, You should have seen her in her prime. That liver hook, that was her being nice. Tony shook his head, his respect, now unguarded. I owe her an apology, he muttered. Mike laughed again, clapping him on the shoulder. Good luck with that. She won't care. The video from the gym spread later that week, not because of hashtags or influencers, but because someone, probably Chloe, uploaded it raw and unedited with the title, Don't Mess with a Woman You Know Nothing About. It showed everything. The laughter, the mockery, the fight, the silence. It showed Lena's calm face, her precise movements, her devastating hook. It showed Jason's collapse, Coach Mike's reveal, Lena's final words. The clip went viral, not for the drama, but for the lesson. People watched it and felt something. Anger, awe, shame, respect. It became the most talked about boxing moment of the year, shared across platforms, dissected in group chats, replayed in gyms from Brooklyn to Bang. Comments flooded in. She's a beast. Jason got what he deserved. Never underestimate anyone. The video wasn't about fame or clout. It was about truth. Raw and unfiltered. A moment that cut through the noise of the internet and left a mark. Days later, the gym's regulars were still grappling with the aftermath. A group of trainees gathered near the punching bags, their voices hushed as they replayed the fight. I watched the video again, one said, shaking his head. She didn't just win, she schooled him. Every move was perfect. Another, the kid with the man bun who'd mocked her scar, looked away, his face flushed. I called her a nobody, he muttered. Now everyone's calling her a legend. The video's spread had turned Lena into a symbol, not of vengeance, but of quiet strength. Jason, back after weeks away, trained in silence, his once loud presence reduced to a shadow. The gym's culture had shifted. No more casual taunts, no more snap judgments. Lena's single round had rewritten their rules, and everyone reveled in the justice of it. Her name, the Viper, was whispered with respect, a reminder that true power didn't need a spotlight. The crowd's transformation was Lena's final victory, a satisfying end to their arrogance. Lena didn't see the video. She didn't have social media, didn't care about views or likes. She was back in her small apartment in Queens, her gloves tucked into a drawer, her shoes drying by the radiator. She sat at her kitchen table, sipping black coffee, staring out the window at the city skyline. The world would talk about her for weeks, maybe months. They'd call her the Viper. They'd replay her liver hook. They'd debate whether Jason deserved it. But Lena didn't need their words. She'd said what she needed to say, not with her voice, but with her fist. She'd reminded herself that strength wasn't in size or swagger. It was in silence, in precision, in the quiet finality of a single perfect shot. Her coffee steamed in the mug, the only sound in the room. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious to her story. But she didn't mind. She'd never fought for their attention. She'd fought for herself. The fitness models were quieter, their poses less flamboyant, their laughter subdued. The trainers stopped joking about easy opponents, their eyes scanning newcomers with new caution. Jason didn't show up for weeks, and when he did, he kept his head down, his music off, his bravado gone. Cliffside's reputation shifted subtly, from a place of ego to a place where respect was earned, not assumed. Lena's name lingered in the air, a warning and a legend. Some said she'd come back, others swore she'd vanish for good, but everyone agreed on one thing: they'd never forget her. Not the scar on her chin, not the calm in her eyes, not the hook that silenced a room. The mirrors reflected a different Jim now, one that had been humbled, one that had learned a lesson it couldn't unlearn. The punching bag swayed slightly, the mat still bore faint stains of sweat, but the air was heavier, carrying the weight of a moment that had changed everything.